1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580. Welcome to hour 3 of Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580. 1-800-920-1580. In this final hour today, this final hour this week, I am pleased to engage in a conversation that we do from time to time around here. As you know, every so often I love engaging the other side. Perhaps they can enlighten me and rescue me if I'm wrong. I don't think so, but I'm humble enough to admit that I do not have a monopoly on the truth. And so today, we will hear from author and media host Charles Love. His book is called Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. In the book, Love argues that the progressive left has gone race crazy, and they want to take America down the same path of insanity. He further argues that the nation faces a pivotal moment, and he asks whether we will reject the race crazies or let them destroy America. I am pleased to be joined by conservative media personality and author Charles Love. Charles Love, good to have you on, sir. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's such an honor. Great talking to you, and I appreciate being on. I don't know if I'm the other side. We'll see about that.
Let's find out. Let's
good to talk to you.
No. It's good to have you on. As I said, I'm willing. I'm humble enough, and I'm old enough now to admit that I do not have a monopoly on the truth. I understand that there is the truth, and there is the way to the truth, and so we're all on our way to the truth. I don't have a monopoly on it, but so I'm always interested to hear how the other side thinks, how they process, and at the very least, I can be emboldened in my own beliefs in conversation. So for those who don't know who Charles Love is, tell me Charles, you've got an hour, so I'm glad I got you for the full hour. We can unpack this and get into your book. But in short form, give me and the audience a sense of who Charles Love is, what your work is about, and how you've come to have these kinds of views, and we'll get into the book straight ahead.
Great. I guess I want to lead, since we talk about sides, with saying that I don't talk much about politics and rarely write about it unless people lead with that. So I have my views, as anyone else does, but I don't really think the way to solve it is through politics. Obviously, it's important, and you need to move things. The government has a role. We move things through legislation, so you have a side in that respect that needs that tries to win out on ideas and such. But I just look at it from the standpoint of I'm more of a solutions guy. It's like you said, I can be wrong. If your solutions will work, we'll go with your solution. I just think that with the what I was seeing, that we weren't focused on the root cause of problems or how to fix them. And this is just my opinion. And this is everyone. I don't think it's the Democrats are doing it or Republicans are doing it. I just think in the debate, race has a part and politics has a part. But if we want to solve whatever myriad of problems we have, and I'm sure we'll go through some of them, I just didn't think I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, we're not really arguing what the problem is. So we're never going to find a solution if we're not going all the way down to the root of the problem. And so I kind of write from the standpoint of saying, let's make sure, think about a corporate office and you're in the boardroom, you have a problem. You go to the whiteboard, you write all the potential issues that are up there, and you start working their way through. You prioritize them, you work your way through them. And race should be on that board. Politics should be on that board. I don't think it should be the only things we talk about. So I try to kind of talk about it from a different standpoint.
So you said a moment ago that you really don't do politics, and yet this book is a stinging critique of the progressive left and the racism movement. That's your book title, The Progressive Racism Movement. So explain to me how you don't do politics, but you demonize and you blame the progressive left for this racism movement.
Well, I think just like the most extreme on the right, that they're a loud but small group. I don't think most Democrats, when I talk about progressive left, I don't think that's most Democrats. That's just I could again be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. So when I talk about that, I only talk about the people who fit that mold. And, I guess we will discuss it and see, is that 5% or is that 85% or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, but again, let me come back to my question, because I respectfully, I don't think you've answered it yet. You said you don't do politics, but this book is not a critique of the racist right. It's not a critique of the racist right. It is a critique of the progressive left and their racism movement. So again, help me understand why you're critiquing the left and not the right, if you say it's on both sides.
Oh yeah, definitely there's critique on both sides. I guess I could critique it because right now they're controlling the narrative. I mean, if the loudest voices we were hearing were those voices, I guess we will be critiquing those. And I would argue that where those voices are being amplified, there is a boatload of critique on it. So it's not like there's no one critiquing what we would call the racists on the right.
When you
So
say,
that's the argument.
yeah, you lost me again here. I'm trying to stay with you. When you say when you say that the left, that the progressives are controlling the narrative, you cannot be serious about that. We just endured 4 years of Donald Trump, and people are still believe that the big lie that Donald Trump won the election. Tell me where the evidence is. What are you pointing to that suggests to you that the left, that the progressive left, is controlling the narrative in this country?
Well, that's what I hear. I don't know about others. When I turn on the TV and everything, that's what I hear. When I listen to, the regular news, obviously, if you listen to news from MSNBC or Fox News, you listen to a particular, they are openly telling you that they have a particular ideology. But if you listen to any other news, you read most cities' newspapers, you look at entertainment, you watch TV, you watch movies, you watch whatever. It's everywhere. I think, maybe we hear and see different things, but everything that I hear is coming from that. But now they're talking about, the Trump and the people who are supported, but they have the loudest voice. They're talking about it, and they're saying, this is what everyone else is saying. But it's because they're all saying it. But the voices you hear are not on the right. You can't say that, you can't tell me that you believe that most of the mainstream narrative is coming from the right. Is that what you're saying? Are we missing each other there?
No.
Because we obviously got to start by agreeing on something.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. After 4 years of Donald Trump and all of the racism and the xenophobia and the like that we got from him, why would you spend this much energy and cut down this number of trees to write a book critiquing the progressive left, but not Donald Trump? That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm just trying to get at why you've trained your eye on the left when there's so many. There's a litany of examples. We haven't even gotten to the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. We haven't gotten to the trial of the 3 white men who were accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery. I'm just trying to understand. Again, I don't have a monopoly on the truth. I want to understand the way that Charles Love sees the world. Why would you spend this much time critiquing the progressive left and not Trump and the racist right? I just want to know why you trained your eye in this direction. That's my question.
Oh, I got your question. I feel I answered it. I guess this is agree to disagree, because you are asking the question again as if I'm avoiding the answer. I just don't think you agree, or as you say, understand the answer. But I think I answered it. I think so. So let me ask you a quick question. You're the interviewer. I shouldn't ask you a bunch of questions. I apologize. Just quickly. So you don't think that there's a lot of a mountain of evidence, as you say, on the right of racism, but you don't think there's a mountain of media covering it?
Yeah.
You think it got underreported?
Let me do this. I'm going to do this to be kind to you this one time, and then we're going to move on and talk about your book.
It's the only one.
No, it's the only one, but I'm going to do it since you asked, because this is a conversation where I'm asking the questions, you're going to give the answers. It's your book. I didn't write a book critiquing the progressive left, so I've given you an hour of my good time and our audience's time to talk about your text, and we'll get back to your book, but I will respectfully, though, I'll answer your question. Racism is a part of everything in this country as far as I am concerned. But I think you are completely missing the boat if you think that the problem with racism in this country is a problem generated by people on the left versus the radical right versus the Trumps of the world. If you think that the problem we have right now is created by the people who were in the streets over the last couple of years in this racial reckoning trying to get justice, if you think they are the source of the problem, then I think you're right. We absolutely have a complete disconnect. But I digress on that point. It's your book. I've got a lot more questions for you. The book is called Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. The author is our guest in this hour, Charles Love. Pleased to have him. More with him when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis, Smiley when we come forward. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Well, I didn't know you'd stick around, but I hoped you would, and I'm glad you did, because this is going to be a fascinating conversation in this hour. I am pleased to have as our guest today, Charles Love. Let me say, as I've said many times on this program, when I invite people on to talk about their points of view, I may not agree with it, But I am always respectful of those whose point of view is different than mine. And I actually appreciate the fact that they will sit for an hour conversation with me and this audience. They don't have to do that. He could only be doing Fox News, which he does all the time. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk to Charles Love so I can better understand why and how he sees the world in the way that he does. Having said that, I think there's one thing that we do agree on. I think that too often we get so wed to ideology that we look right past good ideas. And so Charles and I agree on that. If your idea is better than mine, let's go with your idea. I think, again, we get so wed to ideology sometimes we look right past good ideas. What I can't understand is how Charles Love thinks that the race crazies are on the left in this country, BLM, 1619, or as he calls it, the progressive racism movement. I don't get that. I don't see how he comes to that conclusion, but he wrote the book, and I'm glad he's on for this hour to talk about it. So Charles, let's jump right into the issues that you suggested earlier we would get to. Indeed, we will get to them now. And let me just take your book one subtitle at a time. When you say that the race crazies are on the left, and you have a book that offers a critique of BLM, let's start with that. So tell me your thoughts about BLM and why they are full of race crazies, and then we'll move on.
So my issue with BLM is that now, as you say, we all have opinions. So in my opinion, I don't think that their premise is completely, I won't say, void of any facts, but I think there's a context to it that may be missing. And so there is issues with racism and there's issues with policing, but I say the way they address it is not necessarily the best way. And that saying that all cops are bastards, as we heard people say, or saying cops are hunting us down, I don't agree with that. I do agree that there are issues in policing and we can address them, but I look at it like you look at the problem and you try to find a way to solve it. And how you try to solve it will be dictated by what you think the problem is. So if you think there are problems, whether it's race or whatever the problems are, that there are problems that this needs to be adjusted, this is what the reason is for that's causing it, and this is what we need to do, we sit around and we come up with a solution. But if you think, soup to nuts, top to bottom, is completely, totally, the system is turned upon its head and it can't be fixed, that's when you say burn the system down. So I say that, one, I don't agree with the way they lay the issue out. But even if they're right and I'm wrong, as you say, that's possible. So I'm wrong. I don't also go on to say that I don't believe that the steps that they're taking will lead us to the conclusion that we all want. We want better policing in the community, but I don't think the things that they're calling for will lead to that.
So tell me more then about what steps they are taking, to use your phrase. What steps are they taking that you find inherently wrong?
Well, let's just say we've heard the debate about defunding the police, why we should or why we shouldn't. People saying that that won't be a good thing, and they're saying, well, and I don't hear the BLM spokespeople or anyone saying that, but people who support them will say, well, that's not really what they mean. You're taking them out of context. They mean, just reallocating resources to this. But in their own words, they say that we are abolitionists. The website obviously changes from time to time, but right now they have a thing on the site that actually says abolition. So I don't think that most people would say fixing it means abolishing police. So that's one example.
Mm-hmm. You admit that there is a problem with police accountability in this country, as you did a moment ago. So what's your solution? What is your solution to the police accountability issue, particularly as it relates to cops, white cops who kill black men, kill black women, like George Floyd or like Breonna Taylor? If you admit the problem exists and you don't like the way BLM is approaching it, what is your solution to that problem?
Well, first of all, I'm admitting that there's a problem, but I'm not saying that we agree, with the same extreme level of what the problem is. I think that there's a policing problem. There's a problem from, what they called it, police brutality. That does not mean, I believe, that, as I said earlier, that we are being hunted down, that police are just indiscriminately shooting black people at random, ad nauseum, all over the place, and it's ubiquitous as rain. I don't believe that. But it doesn't mean that there's not a problem. But to the solution, it does not mean that I have the solution to all these problems. I do have my opinions, and I'm willing to give them. But what I'm saying is, if we focus on that as the problem, and we go to that extreme level, we're not just, obviously that's something that would really, light a fire under you, right? So the way you approach it, you won't listen to any other suggestions. So I think we should get together and come up with some solutions that will solve the problem. But we're not, because if we tell people that blacks are being shot in that way, of course the solution is going to be more extreme than what may work or may actually be practical.
Well, a couple of things here. One, I think you're making a distinction without a real difference, number one. Number two, I think the problem is ubiquitous. I'll unpack that.
You don't think there's a difference between people being shot and killed and not being hunted down and being killed?
No, there's
a difference.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say there's a difference in saying that we're all being shot dead in the street for no reason and brutality and other forms. But go on.
Okay, so you said that you don't think it is ubiquitous. Let's just take that word. I disagree with you. I think it is ubiquitous. But even if I'm wrong about the fact that it is ubiquitous, you must admit that there is a pattern that cops have of killing black and brown people. And it's not because Tavis said so. It's because the data on this is incontrovertible. So when you say it's not ubiquitous, you can say ubiquitous. You can call it ubiquitous, or you can call it a pattern. But it's one or the other. So do you see the pattern? Do you see the data that points up the pattern of black and brown men too often being killed by cops?
Give me an example of the data.
Is that a serious
because
question?
We all have the same data. It's the way you.
Yeah.
It's the way. Oh, forget about that. I'm sorry. I got a radio show. I'm used to asking. Sorry, scratch that. Ignore the question. But I will say my answer to that is the data's the same. People interpret it differently. So I can't say. I will not say that I agree that the data shows that blacks are being killed by police, and it shows that clearly it's race.
No, it's not a matter. No, I'm sorry, Charles, not to cut you off. It's not a matter of whether you agree, as I said earlier. The data on this is
I'm saying that's not what the data shows.
No, it does. The data on this is incontrovertible. Given the number, given the relationship between the number of black men, the parallel between the number of black and brown men who are killed by cops versus the numbers we make up in society, our place in society, the data on the proportionality of who gets killed by cops is incontrovertible. You can't be debating that. And if that's not so,
I'm not debating that. I'm debating that you're taking the numbers out of context. That's what I'm debating.
No, well,
because you're just saying you need all the information to get a proper equation.
No,
and to take
I'm
the data, what the data is saying.
I'm challenging very simply your use of one word. You said that it is not a ubiquitous problem. And I'm asking you, even if you don't want to call the problem ubiquitous, do you see a pattern of cops killing black and brown men proportionately more than anybody else in this country? Yes or no? That's my question.
That's not a yes or no question. That's unfair.
So you don't
because of the.
So you don't see the pattern.
You're forcing me to say yes or no.
No. I'm not playing games. I'm asking you based on the data.
I know, but
do you see the pattern? That's all I'm asking. Do you see the pattern here?
But no, because those are not the only two numbers you can use to come up with the conclusion there. You have to look at time, space, place, the police background, the situation that it was in. You can't just say black percentage of population X, number of shootings Y, therefore this. No, that's not true.
Let me ask you this, just because I'm curious. In this moment, as you and I sit right now for this conversation, the country is watching two trials simultaneously. The trial of Kyle Rittenhouse for killing two folk at a demonstration, and the trial of the three white men accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia as he was jogging. The country's watching both of those trials right now. Race is at the epicenter of both of those cases. You don't want to call it ubiquitous. You don't want to acknowledge there's a pattern. I'm just curious. How do you process the moment that we're in right now with both of these trials happening simultaneously? How do you see that?
My instinct was to ask the question. Sorry. I don't think it has anything to do with policing. So that's an unfair tie-in because you're changing the subject at that point because in neither case was there police involved. So that's a different topic. And I don't see Kyle, his case as a specifically race case. Even if the others obviously is, you can't say both of these are racial shootings. So
how do you,
they're not tied to the policing question.
Okay. How do you see?
He shot white people and none of them are cops.
Yeah, but he shot white people who were there protesting on behalf of black people. He shot white people at a protest where they were there supporting the rights of African Americans.
There is no police. You can't use that as an answer to my question, trying to force my yes or no answer to the policing thing. This has nothing to do with policing.
Let me move on from BLM.
So I think we can talk about that, but it has nothing to do with the police thing.
No, I think the audience gets the point. As I said, I engage in these conversations because perhaps I'm missing something. I want to see what the other side thinks about this and what they have to say. So I hear your point about BLM. I still think you still think you're right. I still think you're terribly wrong about that. But let's move on. I've only got an hour. So the second part of your critique in your book, Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. Talk to me about 1619. Why are they full of race crazies?
Because I already know you agree because you already said it, because they did some history. I write in the book that it's well written and it's mostly factual, so no one can say I did not say that. But obviously, it's like doing a research paper and you have confirmation bias and you go look for this stuff. So they include things that are factually accurate. You can look it up. But the conclusions that they draw from it is not, it's an opinion. So everyone has one. They have the right to their opinion, but it's being framed and taught as if it's factual. And then they leave out these important sections, the swaths of history missing. So if the argument today is that we want to teach accurate history, then I have no issues with anything that they teach from a historical standpoint, but I think that we should also teach what I feel is being left out. So that's my issue.
All right, so again, you've lost me once again. I'm really trying to follow you here, Charles, and you keep losing me. So you acknowledged 30 seconds ago that the 1619 project is full of facts. You don't deny that their research, their data is full of facts, but then you say the conclusions they draw aren't factual. How does one end up with conclusions that are not factual if you started with facts?
Well, you're unfair about the first part. It's full of facts, but it's not all factual. So there's enough facts that you can't just flat. I cannot, in all honesty, come out and say everything in the 1619 project is a lie. That would be crazy. So that's what I mean by that. There are facts, but a lie of omission is a shift of that fact, right? So if you say something, if you frame something, started with something, so this happened in this year, fact, and then you say you move to something else and you leave out what happened in the middle or why it happened or what happened after, then it's shifting to opinion at that point. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so I'm not saying it's all facts. So that's when I talk about the conclusion as being wrong. I'm not saying that everything in it is factual. It's open, and the whole premise is that racism is in the DNA of America, which you agree with. I don't. That's the point we don't agree on. But, if that is the case, the last time I checked, DNA can't be changed. So no matter what kind of shifting of the chairs you do and whatever fixing of mindsets you do, the DNA is still going to be there. You're going to tear the system down, rebuild it, and the racism is still going to be there.
I think that's a lot of conjecture, respectfully. When we come forward after news and traffic, though, I want to ask you a very specific question. What is it about the conclusions drawn by the 1619 project that you have issue with? Specifically, what conclusions have they drawn based upon the facts you acknowledge that do exist in the research? What conclusions have they drawn that trouble you? We'll continue with Charles Love in his new book, Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement, after news and traffic on KBLA Talk 1580.
Build black better. Tweet it. Tell it. LA finally has a black-owned talk radio station. And it's unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome back. We are rooting for everybody black. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. He is Charles Love, the author of a new book called Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. As you can tell by the book's title, he thinks that the left is full of race crazies and that we, the progressives, are a part of the problem, perhaps the epicenter of the problem in this country when it comes to race. I obviously wholeheartedly disagree with that, but I wanted to hear his take on why he feels the way he feels. During the break, I was kind of giggling because I'm getting blown up from people all around the country. Sending me data, Charles, that I will send to you when this program is over with. It's not like I don't know this, and I'm not going to debate the data with you. We had that conversation earlier, but I'm just looking at one of the articles that people are sending me to share with you so you can get in the know. This is from Harvard. The Harvard School of Public Health just put out a new study, and these things happen all the time, sadly. A new study just out from Harvard, the School of Public Health. Black people more than 3 times as likely as white people to be killed during a police encounter. And that is, I said, the data is incontrovertible. I'm not going to spend waste my time debating the data, but I don't know why you close your eyes to that kind of reality when, again, the data is everywhere. about this pattern.
That's not fair.
And so it is ubiquitous.
That's not fair because
Okay.
I agree with that. That's a different data point than what we were talking about. So yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
So before you start saying I don't agree with all the data, I agree with that.
Okay.
We were talking about something different. And hey, I like the thing before the commercial when they said we root for all the black people. Remember, I'm here. Root for me.
Yeah,
Let's go.
yeah. You got.
He's like, yeah.
No, we are rooting for everybody black, and I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you because you're black, but I want you to get it right. I want you to get it right because on a number of these things, I think you're wrong. So I'm still rooting for you. I ain't gonna hate on you because you're black.
Right.
But just because yeah, exactly. Just because you my skin folk don't mean you're my kin folk, and I want to get you right. So let me move. Let's get back to 1619. So you have in your title, Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. So what specifically about the facts that 1619 laid out? What about their conclusions do you find so reprehensible?
Okay, well, you were saying that they're sending you a lot of data. You can look this up if you think I'm wrong, because you don't have to take my words. Take Nicole Hannah-Jones's words. She has a book coming out next week. She says she's corrected some of her imprecise language, because in the project it says, it clearly says that all whites are racist. Nobody really believes that, even the people who say that. And she said she should have said some or Southern or the founders, right? So you can talk about the founders being racist and owning slaves, right? And that's a fact, right? But you can't say all, because you keep in mind, this is going in schools, you're teaching kids, we want to be precise. So you can't say all when some of them did not. You can't have a historic piece on race and act as if about abolitionists never existed, that there weren't people who fought for black freedom and, who didn't prescribe to that racism that permeated the country. So teach it, but don't teach it as it was everyone, right? So it's things like that. It's saying that the first black U.S. senator elected to the Senate was elected after blacks had won the right to vote, and they, marched up and took their newfound freedom to go vote for him. But we all know that U.S. senators were not voted and elected by the public until 1913. So in 1870s, those newly freed enslaved people did not usher in rebels. So there were whites that were voting for that as well. So it's not to say that what they're saying about the obviously clear and putrid racism didn't exist. It's not, you have to teach, if you say true history, you have to include the pieces that are being left out. So it's things of that nature. I talked about the racism in the DNA. It's saying that the country was founded, but for racism, as if to say, without anti-black racism, there would never be an America, right? It's the butterfly effect. You want to change something and then say, for sure what would happen, but for. And, that is not, it's simply not factual.
America was built on the backs of our ancestors. Do you really believe that? You don't believe that? You don't believe that?
Because that implies no. Of course, it was partially, but to say it was built on the back of our ancestors, which it was partially, is to say that it was built 100% on the back. That is one of the aspects of. Of course, it was, but to frame it that way, you are saying that's it. Literally. That is all. No one else contributed except for people who were forced to.
No. I think you're splitting hairs here. Slave labor drove the engine of America. Can you disagree with that? The economic the economic engine was driven by slavery. You don't believe that?
And so was the economic engine. I answer that. And so was the economic engine elsewhere.
And you don't believe that anti-blackness has been part of the American narrative since day one? You don't believe that?
I do.
Okay.
I don't think it was all of, and I don't think that the country would not exist if there was no anti-black racism. You don't say what I changed what I say, because I agree with some of the things you say. But when you say, well, then you're saying this. Don't change what I'm saying.
No. Hold up.
There's no racism today, and I did not say that. I said that it is not the sole reason. It's not you. What I said, let me be clear. Disagree with me. Let me be clear. If there were no take away racism, there would never be America. I do not agree with that.
Okay, so
that's what I don't agree with.
You've lost me again. If America is in whole or in part, listen to me now. If America is in whole or in part built on anti-racist, built on anti-black behavior, it's built in whole or in part on the backs of slave labor. How then do you envision an America that doesn't have an anti-black narrative? I don't get
because
that.
it was in part. You just said why we would just disagree. I don't want to eat up all our time because you said it's in part. You said whole or in part. I disagree with the whole, and if it's in part, then that's out. If it's in part, then that is not the whole of. We can't say exactly what would have happened, but for you're acting like there were no slaves. The same. I'm not talking about all over the world and in the 800s and all that. I'm talking about in Britain.
Yeah,
right? It happened there in the Caribbean. It's not like if that wouldn't have happened, to say that would be to say there would be no Great Britain.
No, I think
you can't say there would be no America without it.
Yeah, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I think I'm speaking English. I do this show every day for 3 hours. I think I'm speaking English. And if I said in whole or in part, I don't know how you missed the point of the question, but I digress. Let me just move forward and ask you this, because I'm curious about this. So it seems to me, from everything you're saying in this conversation and the book, that somewhere along the way you were either appointed or elected as the Negro to defend white people. When did that happen? Because I mean, your defense is of everything white.
You've been so respectful up to this point. That is a disrespect.
No, I'm not asking.
That you would say it. No, it's okay. I'll answer the question. It's fine. You got it out. Let me answer. Sure. I am not the spokesperson for blacks or whites. I'm not defending anyone. All I'm saying is we do have issues of race and other issues in this country and in communities. I care, surprising to you people and all the people who will attack me, about blacks being successful. What I am saying is that focusing solely on race as the root of all the problems, you overlook any possible reason. I'm not allowed to ask you a question. You overlook any other possible reason for problems. So you eliminate the possibility of fixing the problem any other way when you decide that the problem is strictly race. So all I'm saying is you want blacks to succeed, and I want blacks to succeed. I'm not defending whites. I'm saying I can't change them. You have a percentage of whites that you think is racist, and I do. So it's not like we're both at zero. That percentage is clearly different. What I'm saying is I don't want to waste my energy trying to fix them because they ain't listening. So what I want to do, I believe that blacks can do anything that we proven we were doing it obviously when it was extreme, open racism, right? So what I'm saying is we need, as a community and as a country, need to focus on what we can control and do what we can to help our people, and we will be successful in spite of whatever that percentage is of whites that's racist. It is not to defend them or to speak for them, and that is what I believe. So if you disagree with me, then you disagree that blacks can be successful and that blacks can do, and black. So I am anti-black because I think that we can achieve.
No.
And that's just silly for anybody who thinks that.
No, let me. I want to say three things right quick, and we'll move forward. We'll move ahead here. First of all, let me apologize if you felt disrespected by the question. I don't ever want any of my guests, even if I vehemently disagree. My way and my manner and my measure is to never make anyone feel disrespected by a question I ask. So I was sincere in the question. It sounds to me like you are on this soapbox of defending the good white people, and that's how it came across to me. So I wanted to ask how that happened.
I apologize. Let me say it again.
And then, no. and then, so if you felt offended by it, I'm sorry. It's a question, and that's all it was. Secondly, you're right. I don't think we can change white folk, but that doesn't mean we can't critique them. And so I think you have to have a critique of them if you have a critique of us. And finally, when we come forward, I do want to ask this question. When we come forward, what evidence you have that suggests that anybody on the left, that any progressive is pushing an agenda on the issue of race that suggests that they think that the problems of America are solely, that's your word, solely about race. Race is a part of everything in the society, as I've said earlier. But you've never heard me make an argument, and I'm just curious when we come forward, who's making an argument that you've heard that obviously troubles you, that's based on a belief that the problems of this country are solely about race? I want to hear the answer to that question when we come forward. Charles Love, that is, on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward. Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Our guest this hour is Charles Love. His book is called Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. Charles, I'm curious about a couple of things. One, What do you have a critique of the political right on the issue of race, or do you not have a critique of them?
Of course, I got a critique of political everybody, but
Right.
I mean, you'd have to ask me a specific question, or you just saying what do I think they get wrong about race? Or?
No, yeah, I think I can ask you.
Are there racists on the right?
No.
Of course, I don't know the question.
No, I can ask you a specific question. If you were writing a book, I'm not asking for all 400 pages, but if you were writing a book and you were critiquing the right and not the progressive left on the issue of race, what would give me three of your main arguments? Right? What would make up the basis of your critique of the right on the issue of race in this country? I hear your critique of the left. What's your critique of the right?
It'll be similar to the left, only I just don't think they control the narrative. I think that people in general, if you're white, you don't know the black experience. So the way they approach it would sometimes come off as racist, whether it is or not specifically, or they assume, for instance, I wrote about, you talk about data. I think most of the country, unfortunately, too high a percentage of blacks. But because we've been hearing this race narrative, too many people in America, especially whites, think one of three things about black people. They are all criminals, they are all poor, and they are all, or most, I won't say all, I'm sorry, uneducated. So they don't know that 20%, obviously a far higher number, and it needs to go down than whites. But, I ask people, what percentage of blacks do you think are living in poverty? They say 30 to 80%. They think we're all poor. They think that, 10% of blacks have graduated from college. So they have an inferiority belief about blacks, but that's not unique to the right? But I would critique that. It's just, what you don't know, you fill in on your own and you make assumptions. So a lot of assumptions may be wrong. I think that people, all whites prejudge people that based on their race, but I don't think that's specifically right. So I would say similar to that of the left. What I say is different. So you said that you asked before the break. You asked me, why do I think progressive or race racist? Because I focus on the left and not the right. I can give some examples, and I do in the book, and it's a lot of citations there. So if you don't believe me, I don't use the right as citations because I know what people would say. But I would simply put it this way. The evidence is that that's what they talk about all the time. So if we have problems in school and we have people that aren't reading at grade level, nobody says, how do we train them up? How do we get mentors? They say race, right? What percentage of racism it is, we can't fix it by just saying race. No one's talking about solutions, right? We talk about race. We say companies aren't diverse and aren't representing the country properly. So we need a higher percentage of blacks. But no one talks about skills. How do we feed in blacks who are interested in STEM, who can do engineering and those things, and then force the companies to hire more blacks? We just say hire more blacks, and we do nothing about the raw material that we put in. So that's what I say. Is whatever the problem is, all they say is race. So then I assume that that's what they lead with. I can't say whether or not they think of any other things, but when I read articles and watch the news and listen to them, what they say is race. Everything they mention is you said yourself, race permeates everything. I don't believe that, but even if I did, it doesn't mean that it's the only thing. So why is that the only thing we talk about? And I think we do a disservice to solutions and cutting out people, other blacks or anyone else who you say you're open to other solutions, but we never even get to the issues, black, right, left, or right. Nobody talks about the issues because they're fighting over race, right? So we don't even talk about how do we fix these problems. And that's what I have a problem with.
You used the word disservice. I think that I hear what you've said, but I think that statement does a disservice to black institutions of higher learning, to nonprofit organizations, to all kinds of.
Because that's only a small percentage of people. They do a great job.
No. The point, yeah, exactly. That's the point. The point I'm making is there are people every day.
But they're not touching the majority of people.
No, but there are people every day on the ground who are doing the kind of work to arrest these realities, and they're not just arguing that it's only about race, and they're not folding up their arms, acting as if there are no solutions and there's not work to be done. I think the exact opposite. The thing that I most love about black people is our resiliency. I love that we've learned.
People are doing work, but the people we hear.
Well,
are not,
again,
are not talking about the work that they do.
Yeah, but you can't.
They're talking about race and race only.
But you can't judge. You can't judge the entire narrative by a few people that you're listening to. But I digress on that part. Let me move forward.
I'm not. I'm only judging the people I hear.
Let me move forward.
I'm not judging everyone.
Well, you got to listen to more people. Then you got to read more stuff. You got to do more research if you only listen to a few people. But here's the question I want to ask. How else, if not race, again, you said you don't like the phrase, it's solely about race. If not race, if not for race, how else do you explain the disparities that, again, the data is incontrovertible here. How else do you explain the disparities in education, in health, in home ownership, in economic earnings? I could do this all day long if I had the time. If not for race, how else do you explain those disparities in your text?
Come on, you know I can't answer that because you can give me 19 different issues and they all going to be partially race. Don't say I never said it was race, but there's other factors. But the other factors are different based on the issues. So you can't give me 5 issues and say, what else if not race? Because housing is different from education, which is different from criminal justice, which is different from whatever. All I'm saying is there's several issues. We got to this place from a lot of negativity all across the board, and we're not going to fix it with only one solution. That's all I'm saying.
But you're not. But you're not.
They're saying it's all race.
Yeah, no. But you're not denying that in the areas that I mentioned, I could do many more. You're not denying that race is a factor in those disparities. You're not denying that, are you?
No.
Okay.
And no one can ever say
right.
that I was. No, I'm not saying that.
Got it. I've got 4 minutes left. Our remaining moments with Charles Love when we come forward. Stay with us.
Be sure to follow and subscribe to all our socials at KBLA Talk 1580 on Facebook, Twitter, and IG. Stay in touch with us by downloading the all-new KBLA Talk 1580 app on your smartphone. Carry the convo wherever you go. And keep it locked to the only talk station that gives you a voice. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Charles Love, I only have 2 minutes left in this hour. It went really, really fast. Let me ask this as the exit question. What is it that you want the progressive left, or as you call it, the progressive racism movement, what is it you want them to take away from your book?
I want them to do the research and, like you say, and think about what the problems are, race included, but maybe consider other factors so we can actually solve the problem with the things that we can't control. And I want them to understand that whether they get mad when they read it or whatever, to understand it comes from a good place. I am not the spokesperson for white people, and I don't, I'm doing it because I think there's a better way to help black people. So disagree with me if you want, but don't read it and think I'm just like, there are no problems in the black community. These leftists are making it up. No, it's not that. I think the best way to solution is the white people are going away, so they need to be part of what happens. And you're going to create more racists by just screaming that everything is because you're a racist. And I honestly believe that for everybody, you can, for every Tim Wise, you're going to create 3 more of those people who murdered Arbery.
Charles Love is director of Seeking Educational Excellence, SEE, host of the Charles Love Show, and co-host of Cut the Bull podcast, and a scholar at 1776 Unites. His new book is called Race Crazy, BLM 1619 and the Progressive Racism Movement. Charles Love, thanks for coming on. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, sir.
You were great. Except for that one little question, but other than that, thanks, man.
Have a great weekend. Thank you, sir, for your time.